All right. So what I want to cover, a few tools just to kind of get this project, pushed forward bit more. I want to discuss, definitely the type tool, things to watch out for when you're using different case, and then, different sizes, different weights, and really just trying to, make sure that how you are delivering the information is being grouped together properly. And then briefly jump into Photoshop and look at, prepping an image, or some sort of texture that you can be used, within the project itself. All right. To start, you want to think about when you're choosing your typefaces, making sure that if you have a unique typeface that you want to use, but then having one that's going to become a little bit more of a utility that is also complementing the typeface, that's going to have a lot of different weights. All right, so ideally, when you choose a typeface, you want to look at the different weights that you have, as an option, because you want to limit the number of typefaces. But when you have all those different weights, you can then break down the information even further without sizing, right? Color is going to be important, halftones are going to be important, but being able to choose between, one text that's going to be sitting there as a Roman, and then the next one that's going to be, sitting there as like a bold or a black, same size, but it allows that one bit of information to really stand out against the other. When you are looking at all your different typefaces, just think about what we did with Project One, with the words. Same thing applies. You want to see all of this. You want to quickly come up to type, go to case, and then go all uppercase, right? Look at what's happening with all caps. You want to see what it looks like, as all minuscule, or you want to see as title case. So this way then, the first letter is going to be capitalized. So you want to very quickly go through and look at, what the typefaces, how the typefaces are reacting to, the different ways of like showcasing all that information. Tracking is going to become something that you have to work on, right? So down here for this example, so I have like a very small text. It's reversed, so right away we're kind of diminishing the readability with the white on the darker background. But because of it being a much lighter, even in this case a Roman, but even if I went to book or light, I want to open up some of this leading. Some of this tracking rather. So what you do is with any of this smaller text, you want to have that kind of open up. So over here, this is your tracking, and we can just kind of open it up ever so slightly. And then, right about maybe 25 or so, it just allows a little bit more negative space to kind of like feed through some of those letters, especially with all caps, right? When it gets all small, you're going to want, to add that in. If this was also all lowercase, right? So we come up here, we drop this down to minuscule. You can see very quickly, by opening up some of this, this probably could be opened up even further, right? It just allows it a little bit easier read, when this is going to get a little bit smaller. Once you end up using all caps, then you're going to want to go the opposite way. Like all this spacing in between, definitely is making the text much wider than it needs to be. So we can come up in here and kind of tighten up some of that tracking just to kind of, make that space a little bit less, especially when you have the name up in here. You can look at this and say, oh yeah, this definitely can be, a little bit tighter. It doesn't need to be that loose. And then with this, you can see that there's a little bit of an issue here. I'm going to go in and definitely tighten up some of that kerning right there. Maybe this is a little bit too loose as well, slightly, right? So you go through and you make all those adjustments depending on what the size is. All of these metrics that you end up seeing, that's for when you have copy text. Text is set, 10, 11, 12 points. That's what that default is going to be. Once you go beyond that, whether it's smaller or larger, you're going to want to definitely be utilizing specific sizing that's for your needs, okay? Some of the other issues you're going to have to watch out for is when you use all caps. So right in here, you can see the default leading for the last name ends up attaching itself to the doors, right? The time that the door is open, as opposed to the first name. So this space has to be closed up. When you use all caps and you're trying to keep all your text, in this case, all in one text box, you have to go in and make these changes. So I'm going to have to select just this, and I'm going to have to, tighten up some of that leading, and then open up this leading right here to kind of push it away. So this way I'm maintaining that grouping, the proximity of elements together. So this way I don't accidentally have one bit of information going with another piece of information. All right. All right, so once you stop playing around with a lot of different ideas, then you're going to want to use styles. All right, styles is going to save you on this project. Anytime that you create something that is repurposing the same style, the same treatment for multiple things, use styles, because you're going to be working on this. There's going to be tweaks that you want to make. And in this case, it's 13 bits of information that you're working with. You do not want to make a change and then have to change it 12 more times all the way across. All right. So if you utilize your character styles, then you're going to go up to Window Type, and then go into your styles right here. You can't really do this until you get to a point where you're like 90% there with the design. You're like, yeah, this is the typefaces that I'm going to be using. Of course, you can make changes, but you really can't set up styles until you have an idea of what the styles are going to look like. All right. Now, whether you have your text that is all broken up individually, or you are wanting to keep it all in one text, basically one text box, then you have to go in and start making these styles. All right. All right. So to start, I now have this as one of my styles. I'm going to select all of this text here. In the styles, I'm going to create the plus symbol, and it's going to give me character style 1. All right, so I'm going to go in here, I'm going to double click it, and I'm going to have, list it as what that's going to be. So I have the name. In here, I'm going to create a new one, and I'm going to double click this and name it doors. Then I'll do show. All right, so as I'm going through, I'm creating all of this in here that's going to the, if I click off, and I just have it sitting here, I can double click any of these and it will bring up what that information is. So you can see all of the information for what I had is now pulled in. If I don't have anything that's different, now see how, like for instance, let's look at leading. I purposely increased the leading, for the spacing in here. But actually, I want to change the leading there too, because now that's too close to this. So I might need to decide to have separate leading for these two, because I don't want the first name attached to here. All right. Now, when you are creating this, now I can go into the next groupings of information, and now I'm going to click on this. All right. Now, see how this is all caps because I went up to type and I went to case and then I went to uppercase. When I click on, let me click off of this. When I double click on name, you can see that the case hasn't been changed. Because I didn't manually type this in, I didn't change it here. I could change it here, right? So now if I go to all caps and I hit OK, it's now going to change it to all caps. So now when I go to the next one, I can hit name, and now it's all caps. All right, so now I'm going to go to doors, select doors, show. All right, so now what's going to happen, I'm going to go to print, and I'm going to, why didn't that change? There we go. I'm going to look at this, and now I want to change. Like, so, for instance, I really do need to increase maybe the leading right in here, right? It's just way too close. So if I go to click on the name, I go back into the basic, I'm going to increase. Make sure you have preview selected on the bottom, and you can see how this now changes. one line, everything looks good, but then you can see how it's kind of causing an issue with it as being a second line. So I might need a separate style just for this. Once I end up having that all set, I can select here, go into my leading and change it. Go back into here. Whoa, what happened here? Let's do this. All right. And now you can see I'm changing. Now, as I'm changing this, I'm not changing anything else, but see the little plus symbol that comes next to name? That lets me know that this is the style of this, but there's one thing about it, or a couple of things about it, that is different from the rest of the style. So this is letting me know that it's a little bit off. You can, if it's only going to be in certain cases, do that. Or you can say, I'm going to add this as a new style entirely when I need it to go on 2 lines. It really is more of a personal preference for you. All right. All right. So that's essentially going through creating the different styles for all your type. It's going to be useful later on, like I said, when you get to a point where you're fine-tuning everything. You're deciding that, you know what, maybe the name really can't be that bold. I'm going to go in here, instead of black, I'm going to go to medium. And now you can see how it didn't affect that because it changed too much, right? So then you got to go back in here, click this, and then go back through and make that change. When you get to a point when you print, that's the other time when you go in and you're thankful for going through and making these styles for yourself, because then those minor adjustments are instant for you. All right. All right. Next, going over the color schemes in the project handout. I've given you these links. I also said that you can only use 3 spot colors. Analogous color scheme. All right, so I kind of want to go over, what that entails and how to actually set that up. The first one, if you go to this website, it's going to bring you here, right? So you can see that I want this to be an analogous scheme. When I end up choosing this, you can see these are the different complementary that are opposites, monochromatic. But with analogous, you're going to have these 3 sitting in here, and you move them around, and all 3 move together. All right. So you basically try and find a color that it is that you want to use. That's going to be like basically the primary color. These here are the hex codes. Okay. So every specific color is going to have its unique hex code, and it's always going to be a 6-digit number. Now, what you can do once you get this set, and you're happy with these 3 colors, you can just copy these colors in, right? So I'm going to Command C to copy. I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to go create a swatch. And then right here is my hex number. I can select this, Command V, and hit return. So now that color from there is brought in, okay? Remember, this is, right now, this is RGB. So it's going to, be converting it into a cmyk. You can do it that way. You can bring in each of those colors, and then you create a swatch for it. All right. So in here, you have the color right there. You're going to hit plus, and then you can list it, right? Project 2, color 1, I'll say. All right. So I hit OK, and now that is the color swatch for that. So now I go through and say, all right, I want all of the names to be in that color. So I'm clicking on this, and I have all of these set to that color. Now, remember, you're allowed to use halftones of colors. To simply use a halftone, you are going to bring this down. So that is a halftone of that, and then you can make it even more and bring it down. So all of this is still one color. Okay, when you create this swatch, this allows me to reuse this color over and over again. So in here, let's say this is going to be my other, oops. Why is it not going to let me? It's not really going to let me make a so I'm gonna have to manually type that in. It's frustrating. It's not even. Okay, why are you causing this issue here? Here we go. 8, 3, 7, 5, 6. And then I'm going to create a new this p02 and then color 2. Alright, so now I end up having this color that I can bring in, and this is probably going to be my door times. Alright, so once you go through and you have all of your colors in here, and then you do a test print, and then you say, yep, these colors need to be adjusted slightly. Maybe I just need to make the blue a little bit darker, right? You don't want to go through and again select all of these blues. You simply just want to go in and double click the blue, and then I want to adjust the black, and now it's changing the black across everywhere, right? Even if I go to extreme and change the whole color, you can see how it changes all of those colors. So you're using this color at least 13 times. You may be using this multiple times within the actual type layout, and now it's going to change everything for you automatically. When you go to print, you are always going to be adjusting. So this is going to save you a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of headache when you make those minor adjustments. So while you're working at the very beginning of this process, I would be creating your swatches just to make it easier for yourself. All right. If, let's say, you forgot to make a swatch and you have a color in here, let's say this is my color, right? I didn't make it into a swatch, and actually let's make it like more like an orange brown. All right, so this is my color. I want this to be a halftone, and I forgot to make it into a swatch. If I only pull one handle, you can see it just changes that one handle, right? If I hold shift on my keyboard and then click, all 4 handles are going to move. All right, so when you move left, that's going to be a halftone of that. I can't go further to the right because now this would be a halftone of this. So you have to figure out what the darkest color is going to be for your actual layout, and then you can go from there. All right. All right. Good. All right. So the next thing, if let's say you don't go this route, right? You can find color schemes within actual Illustrator itself. Okay, so in here you want to go into your color guide, and you can see all of these through here. At the bottom of this, you can see the little color right here. We're going to click it. Now, with this selected, you're going to click this little arrow, and it's going to pull up all of these different color books. The first color that it's picking from is whatever color you have selected here. So I want to go back to my original. I lost my original. Let's go with my blue right here. So this is going to be the color that I'm going with. I'm going to click here. I want to create the analogous. And here are my handles. It gives me 5 colors. But essentially, it's very similar to what's happening here as you turn. Okay? Now, when you are changing this to the different colors, once you end up getting something close to what you want, you can't have these 5. All right, so you really can only use this one, and this one, or a combination somewhere in between. What you can do is over here, you can remove these ones. You click this, and then you can click on that individual. So now you are left with these. So now it's very similar to what you had from this end. Once you end up having a design that you, or rather a color scheme that you like, then you are going to create a new group. It's going to sit in here, and then you're going to hit OK, and then it's going to be right here for you. All right. So now we can go through, and I can say, all right, this is going to be this color, and then these are going to be this color. and then maybe this is going to be this color. So you're bringing in that color scheme into your design. All right. So whichever way that you want to work that, I mean, there's multiple ways of bringing the color in. The only thing that you definitely want to make certain of is that you are utilizing swatches. Okay. All right. Now you are allowed to bring in images into this. Okay. So I grabbed this image here to bring in. When you bring images in, two things you want to make certain of. One, it's still utilizing, the 3 color max, right? So you have to make sure that it's using that color scheme. But you also want to make sure that the resolution is going to be strong enough. All right. So right now in Illustrator, everything is vector. So if we create a very simple shape, right, and it's going to be this size, it doesn't matter if I keep it this small or I increase it to the whole size of the page, the quality of that print is going to be 100% because it's vector. It's not pixel based. Okay. When you bring an image in, you want to make sure that there's enough resolution with that image for that to actually work. So when you bring this in, right click, open with, go with Illustrator, and then you can copy and then paste it into your document. And then I'm going to scale it down because it hasn't been prepped in Photoshop yet. And then I have it sitting in here. I send it to the background, and I want to look at my links. Anytime you're working with images, you have to have this open. The most important thing is this, your PPI right here. That right there is your resolution. Ideally, you want 300 to be the lowest for resolution. However, if you're using textures, if you're using an image for a background, you can get away with the bare minimum of 150. Okay, anything less than that may become very pixel, and then it's going to look, the quality is going to diminish significantly. But ideally, you want to try and hit 300 anytime that you can. Okay. So when you bring images in, you want to make sure that you're kind of utilizing the color specs. So what you can do in this, you can rework this image in Photoshop before you even bring it in. The other thing, just to kind of illustrate the difference between pixels and vector, these two, from your point of view, should look identical. All right. The issue being, if I hit Command Y, you can see the outline of one while the other one is just a square. That means this one here is an image. It's pixels. This one here is done by all vector. So if we were to zoom in, you would end up seeing this image here be very clean and crisp, whereas this image here will end up becoming pixelated on the edges. Okay, so that right there is the difference between vector and pixels. All right, so I want to bring this in. I want to use, I really went with a terrible color scheme by accident here. I guess we'll use this. So I'm going to copy this hex code. Oops. Okay. And then I'm going to open this up in Photoshop. All right, so right away, this is RGB. We want to go to Image, go to Mode, and go to CMYK. Then we want to go to Image. We want to go to Image Size and change it to 300. When you do change this into 300, you want to make certain that you have the resample turned off. You can see that these three are locked together. So when I change this to 300, it will drop the size of the file, but it won't add any information to it. So you can see the image size stays at 42. If that wasn't the case, if I hit cancel and I do the same thing, go to image size, and this is turned on, you can see that only the width and height is proportionate, selected together. Resolution is on its own. The image size, that's the amount of information going into the actual image. So if I change this to 300, look at what happens to 42.8. It now becomes 746. All right. So what's going to happen is it's going to become pixelated because Photoshop is filling in all of that information, all that empty space with pixels, with surrounding pixels that was already there. All right. So when you change this to a high res, you have to change and make sure that all three of these are locked together. All right. So once you end up having that done, now we can change the color of this. The easiest way is to add in our hex code. So we have that all set. And then I'm going to change this to white because we're going to be printing on a white paper. So it goes from this color to this color. Go up to image, go to adjustments and gradient map right here. That is going to take the purple down to the white. If I click inside, I can adjust where that purple starts. Remember, the purple needs to be the darkest of it. But if I end up closing this in, you'll see how it brings back a little bit more of that detail. All right, so once you end up having this all set, and you can see the darkest part of this texture is going to be that purple, and then it's just gradients, or rather halftones and coloration going down into the white. You're going to hit OK. Hit OK. We're going to go to File, and we're going to go to Save As. And we're going to save it as a TIFF. So this is going to be background. And then save it as a TIFF. And then hit Save. All right. So now, when we bring this image in, I'm going to open with, you can also place. In here, you can go to File, and then go to, I never do it this way. Where is it? Shoot, right here, Place. You can do it this way. It's going to give you a link to the image itself. The advantage of that is it keeps Illustrator relatively smaller, and then later on, you have to embed the images. If I'm only using a couple images in Illustrator, I just instantly embed them into the file that I'm working with. So I will go to Open With, and then when you open it in Illustrator, it's now part of it. So I'm going to copy and then drop it in. And now you can see, because I prepped it the right way, it's a little bit smaller. So now you can see I'm at 300. So once I make it a little bit bigger, I end up dropping it down to that 221. I send that back into the background, and now I have that purple color scheme going on with my design. All right, so that's how you can prep your images in Photoshop, and then save and export, and then bring it into Illustrator. Another thing we can do, let's do a little bit more complicated of one. I chose this one to kind of show you how I would go about doing so. Again, remember, you want to make certain that the contrast of your text is going to be readable. Against this, so there's no way, even by using the gradient map, right? So I'm going to go to Image, go to Mode, cmyk, Image, go to Image Size, change this to 300, and then I'm going to use my gradient map. And you can see there's too much detail in here. So I'm going to still save it so I can show you what I would do. Crowd. All right. Open with. Send that to the back. Let's get rid of that. And you can see there's no way, right? So you can see that all of that shifting is just too much. We would have to like drop this, maybe the opacity, you know, down to almost like 20% just for that text to kind of be seen, okay? The issue being, I really want more of that purple, okay? So what I can do in here, I can choose this purple, but then slightly lighter version. So this way, my going from one to the next, go to gradient map. So you can see I'm playing around with that actual, the different colors in the purple right in there. So you can see that I'm working and trying to figure out what is the best scenario for this to kind of work. So I'm trying to blend that down. So the sharpness from this purple into the next purple isn't as drastic. So this way then I won't have an issue with the readability of the text in front of it. Another thing we can do is with this, go to, oops, I have to hit OK. Okay. I can come up here and then go into my blur. Gaussian is going to give you, a decent option to kind of get rid of some of that detail. Smoothing out some of those edges in the actual background will then let the text be a little bit easier to read. All right, so when you are bringing in textures or bringing in images that you want to use as a texture in the background, keep in mind you really need to make certain that it's going to be readable with the text once it's on top of this. Okay, once you end up having that, there's still going to be times that you want certain text to still stand out, right? So let's bring this back to 100 where it was really difficult. And let's say I want to have this text. I'm going to make it a little bolder. And I want this to kind of have a little bit of a stroke behind it. Actually, let's use this one. And I'm going to make this all white. All right, and I want to have that purple stroke in the background. When you add a stroke to any text, you can't simply just add a stroke like this. All right, that you cannot do. Because if you look at this, you can see with the bolder text, enough of it is still being read, but you can see the smaller, thinner text is closing in on itself. That you can't have, all right? So what you want to do, you have two options. One, let's get rid of the stroke on this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Command C to copy, Command B to paste behind. And now when I add a stroke to that text, you can see I can increase the size of it, but it's not closing in on itself because it's a completely separate text box, a text behind it. All right. That's the proper way of adding a stroke to the text itself. So that's one way. The other way would be to convert all this to outlines, Command Shift O, and then when we add a stroke to it, we then go into our stroke options and align it to the outside. So this way it doesn't close in on itself. The problem is when you have text and you add a stroke to anything, when it's still being text, you don't have that option. You can't click these. So the only time that you can click it is when the text is outlined. All right. So that's one way of kind of giving the text a little bit more separation when it becomes difficult to read with a more complicated background. But ideally, you want to have the background. I would never use this photo. I tried to find one that would be very difficult to use, but you want to find a background that is a little bit more subtle, right? You want some sort of texture to it, but you also don't want it to become super complicated. For larger text, absolutely. If I was using this and dropping it down, that is going to be fine once they start changing the color. But the smaller text, there's just no way. All right. Up in here is like if this was reversed, this text here against all of this would absolutely work. So you want to think about the overall direction of your design and how you're breaking out the information, but really how you're placing the information into the composition and how you're complementing that with the background texture. All right. Okay. So for Monday, looking back at our schedule, so everything shifted. Ideally, I would like to see all of this a work in progress on Monday. We only have Monday and Wednesday before we're off for break. All right. So that means we're not having the crit when we get back. We're going to have the crit now on the 18th, and I'll have to figure out how to reshuffle and figure out our projects to make sure what I want you to learn from this semester is still going to be, doable. So don't think that we're still going to have this. We're going to have push this out. But on Monday, hopefully no more snow. I would really like to see everything as a work in progress. I would love to see, you know, where are we? Where's my? I would like to see your styles and your color schemes in here with the swatches and then your styles. Even if they ultimately change, I just want to make sure that you understand how to actually do that. On the beginning of Wednesday next week, I would like to see prints, even like low, you know, the cheap paper that for the not printed on the Epson. We'll wait for the finals for that. But even on the laser printer, scaling it down to 11 by 17, just looking at these off the screen is going to be crucial for type sizes, color that you've chosen, and the different weights for the type itself. All right. But please reach out if you have any questions, comments, issues. But if I don't see you in a little bit during the Zoom open office hours or whatever, I hope you have a great weekend, and I will see you next week.